Welcome back to the history of genocide and the Holocaust. Just a reminder, the Holocaust was a very dark time in human history. What you are learning about may make you feel sad or angry. Please take care of yourself. Feel free to go to the website to use the SEL toolkit, take breaks, or talk to a trusted adult if needed. Alright, let's take a look at the how of the Holocaust for grades 9 through 12. If you are in grades 6 through 8, hop over to our 6 through 8 Introduction to the Holocaust module. But if you are in grades 9 through 12, you're in the right place. How did the Holocaust happen? It certainly didn't happen overnight. In many ways, the prejudice that had happened over hundreds of years contributed to the Nazis being able to take over and slowly implement the Holocaust over the course of a decade or so. It started with propaganda. One of the first things when Hitler did when he gained power was to create a ministry of public engagement and propaganda. One of the primary targets of the propaganda was young people. He stated this in his book Mein Kampf: whoever has the youth has the future. School curriculum, books, and the requirement to participate in the Hitler Youth all served as a way to get the youth immersed in the propaganda against the Jewish people. This propaganda was powerful in portraying Jews as power-hungry and amoral, as well as determined to take over and destroy the world and society. Of course, this wasn't true and there was no evidence to back this up, but instilling these beliefs in the public helped them implement laws that were anti-Jewish. Jews worked in virtually all professions as doctors, lawyers, business owners, artists, authors, musicians, among many others. In 1933, shortly after Hitler rose to power, the Reichstag, or the German parliament, passed the Decree of Protection of People in the State. This decree provided the foundations for the creation of a police state. It suspended civil liberties, such as freedom of the press and the right to assemble. Soon after that, the prison camp of Dachau was established. Dachau served as a place where critics of the regime, Jews and non-Jews alike, were sent to be punished, starved, and to work as slave laborers. The camp was originally built to house some 5,000 prisoners. By 1935, there were 6 concentration camps in Germany, with over 27,000 German prisoners interned. At first, the Nazis wanted to make life for German Jews so uncomfortable that they would leave voluntarily. The Nazis carried out a number of different measures to achieve this goal. Random acts of violence and a boycott that was limited to April 1st due to international pressure were accompanied by a series of laws barring Jews from working as teachers, medical professionals, and in government positions. On May 10th, book burnings began. The works of Jewish authors were the primary targets, although books by non-Jewish authors that Nazis deemed unacceptable were also burned. Jewish artists were dismissed from their jobs, and Nazis began to define what it meant to be non-Aryan. As a result of these and other actions, about 37,000 Jews left Germany by the end of 1933. In 1934, the Nazis kind of stepped back a little bit just to kind of see what the reaction from public and the world community at large would be. In 1935, along with increased violence and separation of Jewish people from other aspects of society, it also saw the passage of the Nuremberg Laws, which thoroughly defined who was a Jew, and the persecution became, in the Nazi view, justified. The Nuremberg Laws made it clear that Jews were not to be allowed to be part of German life, have no equality under the law, no citizenship. The Nazis drew on American race and immigration laws when writing the Nuremberg Laws in the 1930s. They even sent researchers to the U.S. to look at how Jim Crow laws were used in the South. So this kind of culminated in 1938 with Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. On November 9th and 10th of 1938, some 7,000 Jewish businesses were destroyed, 191 synagogues were burned or destroyed, and 100 Jews were killed and thousands were tortured. Some 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps. So with all of this violence, a lot of people, when they're studying the Holocaust, they wonder, why didn't the Jews leave? Why didn't, after all of this happen, why didn't they just get up and leave? In fact, that was Germans' intention, was to make life so uncomfortable for Jewish people that they left. And in the years leading up to 1939, tens of thousands of Jews did leave Germany. Some were admitted into the United States, others went to other European countries. In 1933, some 37,000 Jews left Germany, like we'd mentioned before. 23,000 left in 1934, and 21,000 left in 1935. You can see a pattern of when there is more anti-Semitic laws and violence, kind of this fluctuation of people leaving. In the early years, the Nazis believed that they could rid themselves of the Jews by forcing the Jews to leave Germany for other countries. As late as 1938, the idea of emigration was still the main goal of Nazi policy. A good number, although not a majority of German Jews, had attempted to leave Germany. But unfortunately, simply wanting to leave did not necessarily guarantee that they'd be able to do so. You need money to leave, and the Nazis had done a good job of taking their jobs away and their livelihoods away. So it was more and more difficult, especially if they had families, to kind of take them out of Germany at this time. And other countries also made it difficult and limiting the numbers of Jewish people that they would take in. A good example of this is the St. Louis. The reluctance of other countries to take Jews often led to tragic scenes. In 1938, 900 Jewish refugees on the ship St. Louis were refused entry to Cuba, although they all possessed Cuban visas. The United States made it clear that the Jews were not welcome in the country, even sending out a Coast Guard ship to prevent the St. Louis from landing on the American coast. The captain was forced to return to Europe, and most of those aboard ended up dying. With the German invasion of Poland in September 1939, 3 million more Jews came under Nazi control, and it became clear that the Nazis forcing Jews to emigrate was no longer to be a possible option in order for Germany to become Jew-free. They hadn't yet figured out how to accomplish this, so Nazis began trying several different approaches at once. One of the things they did was they began deporting Jews from Germany and Western Poland to eastern part of the country. In fall of 1939, a plan was made to create a reservation for all of the Jews from Poland and other German territories. At the same time, the Nazis were also forcing the Jews of Poland to move into ghettos. These ghettos were often in the poorest areas of the city. The former residents were moved out, and tens of thousands of Jews were moved in. Food was scarce, and ghettos were overcrowded, leading to sickness and starvation. Most of the buildings in the ghetto were in terrible condition. In addition to cold weather and lack of warm clothes, this led to people freezing to death. In spite of these terrible conditions, Jewish captives found ways to make music. They performed in makeshift orchestras, composing and performing music in secret. This provided a way for Jewish captives to express their emotions and maintain their cultural identities. Then, in June 1941, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union, which brought even more millions of Jews under their control. This led to a huge logistical problem of having millions of Jews that the Nazis wanted to eliminate from Germany. They began training secret police and soldiers to go to towns and take all of the Jewish people to nearby fields and woods and shoot them in mass graves. This really wasn't efficient, and they realized, because of their previous efforts in moving all of the Jewish people into ghettos, they had a concentration of people where they're able to take them and put them into all of these different extermination camps. The Nazis held a conference known as the Wannsee Conference in January of 1942 to discuss the details of the final solution. They spoke about extermination camps and the use of gas for mass killing. Upon arrival at a concentration camp, the Jewish people were divided into groups based on age and health. Some were chosen to join the workforce, where they would live in inhuman conditions with little food or protection from the elements, and in constant fear of beatings, abuse, and death. The procedure at various death camps was similar. It has been described of moving the Jewish individuals into gas chambers and eventually crematoriums, where they're able to kill hundreds and thousands of bodies in days. Starvation, beating, torture, and killing were regular features of camp life. Inmates were subjected to medical experiments that were cruel and painful. These experiments included testing the effects of high altitude by putting prisoners in pressure chambers, submersion in freezing water to see how long humans could survive. Victims' belongings and even their bodies were used by Germans for economic gain. Women's hair was cut off before and after gassing, collected and sent to Germany to be made into felt cloth and mattresses. German SS and police murdered nearly 2.7 million Jews in the extermination camps, either by asphyxiation, with poison gas, or by shooting. The murder of European Jewry was a massive operation, and tens of thousands of regular people participated. Businessmen, doctors, engineers, contractors, plumbers, among others. They all chose to be part of the process, or convinced themselves that it was okay to be a part of this process. It also required tons of equipment, machinery, and supplies, all of which had to be transported by train and processed by camp personnel. Of all the equipment necessary to carry out the final solution, none was more important than trains, of course, which were indispensable for troops fighting in the Russian front. Besides the trains carrying the victims to the camps, the trains also carried the dead victims' valuables back to Germany. So let's take a look at the toll of the Holocaust. When the Holocaust was over, more than 6 million Jews, including 1.5 million Jewish children, were dead. In addition to the 6 million Jews that were murdered, the Nazis were also directly responsible for the death by starvation, shooting, and overwork of probably another 9 to 10 million people. The Sinti and Roma of Europe were also considered an inferior race, and about 40% of Europe's 1 million Sinti and Roma were murdered. Slavic peoples such as Poles, Ukrainians, and Belarusians were also considered inferior and suitable only for slave labor, and it's estimated that almost 4 million were murdered immediately or died while enslaved. In addition, 2 to 3 million Soviet prisoners of war were deliberately allowed to die in captivity. The Nazis also singled out and marginalized groups for persecution, such as the LGBTQ individuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, communists, people with noticeably different abilities, and even people without jobs or housing. Okay, so thanks for listening. This was the How of the Holocaust for grades 9 through 12. If you need to take a break, please do. If you need to access our SEL toolkit on the Moose website, please do that as well. Again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you continue on to the next module.